I am Dr. Nick, the Apostle Paul's messenger in this 21st century world.
What message would the Apostle Paul deliver to a 21st century American audience if he were alive today?
The author has written
an open letter about creation and life. By trusting God in the miracle of new life.
So what I'm going to be doing today is reviewing the petition, going through it for you and with you, so that at some point we're going to ask you to sign the petition. At this level, we have 84 signers in 6 days. Our goal is to have 1,000 signers. When we get 1,000 signers, that gives us a lot of credibility in approaching the public with this petition. All right, we certainly want to have much more than 1,000 people signing it, but we need to at least get some momentum and some credibility. And that's why I'm here today, is to address the petition as strongly as I can. The issue here is accountability. The FDA, which is the Food and Drug Administration, has not been responsible. That's a nice word, okay? Has not been responsible in administering their responsibilities to protect the public from drugs and food. In this case, we're just talking about a drug. The drug is the abortion pill, Mifepristone. This was approved in 2000. It only went through a very preliminary clinical testing period, and it was approved under a provision that when a drug is needed in an important emergency situation, that you do not have to go through this approval process to see the quality of the drug. Now, this happened, I guess you can relate to this, during the COVID crisis, epidemic. During COVID, there were people who were being put on ventilators, who were dying because of the problem with the COVID with COVID. Okay, and to prevent people from dying, what happened is that the Food and Drug Administration went into emergency mode, and they, in that case, decided to approve of the vaccines. Now, we know since then that fast tracking something like that has problems, because some people have become very sick with having used those vaccines, and even having followed up with additional shots after their initial vaccine, okay, the booster shots. But back in 2000, the rule of allowing a drug into the community, into the marketplace, without sufficient research was used in this case with the abortion pill, saying that it was an emergency. They had to get the abortion pill out to the community. There's no way that compares to anything that happened during the vaccine shot in COVID. Okay, that in itself, I can say, had more legitimacy in being an emergency, because there were people that were in the hospital, that were on ventilators, that were dying, and it was scary. And most people just said, we got to do something to prevent this pandemic from getting worse. So in that case, I can see why that was even implemented, even though there's a lot about that vaccine that I do not like and did not like, and I have not taken that vaccine. But we'll just leave that as it is. But back in 2000, the abortion pill was approved without the clinical research that needed to happen. And there wasn't time and money that was given to it. It was really pushed out because there were people in the pro-abortion industry that wanted that pill out, and politics got involved. And unfortunately, things like that happen. But since then, we have at least 36 women that we know have died as a result of taking this drug. I've mentioned this in some of the other episodes. Excuse me. I would think that there is probably a lot more than 36, and I'll tell you why. Because there are some highly populated states that do not report any statistics to the CDC. All right? And let me tell you what states they are. I can tell you at least 4 that I could think of off the top of my head. That's California, which is highly populated, New Jersey, which is very populated, Michigan, which also is highly populated, and Maryland. So you have 4 highly populated states that do not report data to the CDC. I can't, honestly, we got to look into this too. I can't see why the CDC would not have adequate statistics on deaths and hospitalizations and blood transfusions and all kinds of problems that occur with taking any drug, let alone an abortion drug. All right. Which is, we're going to get into some of the other reasons why we need to address this and ask the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., to ban the abortion pill Mifepristone permanently. All right. There is an effort on the part of some physician groups that have already requested the secretary to go back to the 2000 requirements that were set, which are much more stricter than the requirements that we are faced with today. But I wouldn't agree with that. I would be glad to see that there are many more restrictions placed on it. However, it needs to be banned completely because those restrictions that were given to it in 2000 were as a result of very poor research on the part of the FDA. So how can you go back to something that was bad to begin with and use that as a standard to continue? I think we have to go further than that. We have to go to the point of banning it completely. All right. Now, if the FDA decides that it will follow the proper protocols, okay, obviously, even though I wouldn't agree with it, I would be much more satisfied if they had realistic standards. However, what we're finding now is that there are some people, some research firms that have found out that the FDA neglected in its trials, in its research trials, some facts that are now coming out that make it worse than what it really is and what they thought it was back in 2000. And the drug label that is on that pill right now is really inaccurate because it refers back to their prior thinking. It doesn't refer to today's findings. So this whole thing is a mess. And so there needs to be some action taken, serious action. And I would ask you to go on to my and my colleagues' website, and I'm gonna try to put it on the page here. Okay, I'm gonna see that you can see it, so you can go back to it and refer to it, and you can go on the website and actually review the petition and sign it, please. We need a lot more signatures to deal with this. Okay, but let me go a little further and explain some of the other issues that are in that petition. Okay, first of all, where do these abortion drugs come from? You would think they're being made some of them are being made in the United States, yes. And that's another situation as well that has political issues with it. Okay, you can go back and look at those other prior episodes and see what I'm talking about, but I can't cover everything in this one episode. But what we're finding out is that these drugs are being manufactured in India, in the United Arab Emirates, in Mexico, in Canada, and in some other places throughout the world. Now, there's no guarantee that the manufacturing of these drugs in these foreign countries are really of high standard. Some of them say we're following the FDA's standards. The FDA standards are flawed to begin with. So don't brag that you're following the FDA standards. That's nuts. All right. And so what they do is now we don't know the quality of these drugs. Okay. They really haven't done research. Some of them are relying on what the FDA has said. They haven't done their own research to find out whether these drugs have really permanent problems that are going to, some of these women, especially the younger women, are going to have to face later on in life. And I'll get into some of that as well. Okay. So we don't know about the testing of these drugs. We don't know how safe they are. What they do, though, is this. How do women get the drugs? This is also mind-blowing. Okay. These foreign countries have partners in the United States. All right. I guess you might want to call them middlemen, all right, or whatever. They send the drugs to these middlemen. Some of them charge you for the drug if you go online. This is the other part of it that is really a little absurd. You don't have any doctor prescribing the medicine for you. You can go online. You can order the drug. They'll send it to your home. Sometimes the same day. That's what they advertise. That's how quickly, if you want to really deal with this as your own personal emergency, okay, you can get it in a day. I guess you have to pay some really heavy shipping costs, but that's another issue. So this middleman sends the drugs to women directly who order them from these middlemen organizations, okay? Doesn't make any difference what their names are, okay? They're there to, some of them even give away because some wealthy individual has paid for these drugs, because the manufacturers in India are not going to do all this work, send it to the United States and not get money for it. They'll be crazy, all right? So somebody is picking up the cost of what they call free abortion pills. So the girls go on the internet, they order these free abortion pills, okay, that are made in some foreign country, and we don't know the quality of it. And they have a piece of paper that describes what they have to do to perform the abortion in their home. Now, this is getting even more complicated because, and I don't support surgical abortions at all. Okay. That's an abortion that you get when you go to a clinic and the doctor is there and he aborts the child for you. All right. Because even in those clinics, they have to do certain things. They have to give you a blood test to see that you really are pregnant. Okay. They have to do an ultrasound so that they can at least, the ultrasound in some cases shows the child alive and the woman decides not to have the abortion, which is the reason why one of the reasons why they made the ultrasound mandatory. But the other reason is that you could tell if there's an ectopic pregnancy, right? When you do this at home without a doctor, a nurse, a pharmacist being involved, how do you know that you're really not dealing with an ectopic pregnancy? This is and some women don't even know the gestational age of what do they call it? An embryo, okay, zygote, the earliest stage, an embryo or fetus. The woman doesn't even know the gestational stage that would identify whether it's a zygote, whether it's a embryo, or whether it's a fetus. Okay, so that's another tragedy because these drugs technically cannot deal with second and third trimester abortions. Okay, it's going to be just too hard to eliminate a child out of your uterus in your bathroom. If you can imagine what I'm saying, okay? It is very difficult and very strange and very tragic, to say the least. Now, let me tell you a little bit about the drug, though. This drug, and this is why I'm concerned about younger women, this drug, Mifepristone, it's an anti-progesterone drug. Its purpose, and sometimes I think of it like the Pac-Man that goes around and destroys everything that's in his way. This is what this drug does. It has receptors to it that attach themselves to the progesterone and then destroy the progesterone, blow it up, or whatever it does. So the woman has lost her natural hormones that are intended. See, her body tells her system, reproductive system, that you have a child in you and you need to have an extra dose of progesterone to sustain the life of this extra person. What they're doing is they're destroying your progesterone. So here you are naturally producing something that is being destroyed. What the FDA never did, because it only had a 6-month review process as opposed to 6 to 10 years. It spent $8 million and then cut the flow of research money off when they normally spend over $100 million to approve a drug. This is $8 million, which is 1/8 of 8% of the amount of money that is normally. So they just cut off the funding. How can you know how effective a drug is if you haven't funded its research properly? I have a feeling that what they did was that they looked towards Europe and asked them what their experience was with the drug, because the drug was in Europe 20 years before it came to the United States and got approved. So the important point here is that the FDA has produced and approved of a drug that kills your progesterone, and they don't know whether in the long term, because they hadn't done long-term research, okay, and follow-up. They're not doing that to determine whether those young women that took this abortion pill when they're maybe 18, 20, 21 years old, and now they're much older, they might be settled in, they want to have a family, and they can't get pregnant, or the child has some deformities, or whatever the case may be. And I'm sure that this young lady isn't thinking back 10 years and saying, oh, maybe it was because of that abortion pill that I'm having these problems. No, they're just thinking that this is just a misfortune at that particular time. Okay, there's no real follow-up to find out whether these women that are saying they have fertility problems are in fact having taken in the past the abortion pill. There's no formal study being done for that. So the FDA has really failed in its ability not only to approve of a drug that is safe, but to not be following up on it and dealing with the issues that they're finding out that are problems. 36 women, and not from any state like California, New Jersey, Michigan, or Maryland. So if you added up how many real people died in those other states, it would be much more than 36. It might be 3,600. I'm not saying that it is, but we don't know because they don't report it. And one of the things that President Obama did was he made it a point that in emergency situations, when a girl goes or a woman goes to an emergency room as a result of having taken this pill, if there's no fatality, if that woman doesn't eventually die because of the problems she's experiencing, there's no reporting of that particular emergency room situation to the CDC. The only thing the CDC is to receive from those emergency room situations is the women that died as a result of it. So we don't even know that some of the other problems that people are having. We have some idea because people have discussed it in other settings, and we're going to get into some of that too. Okay, the other pill, there's a companion pill to the Mifepristone. The Mifepristone is anti-progesterone, destroys the progesterone, therefore the child ends up dying in its mother's uterus. Okay, now the mother has a dead child in her uterus. And guess what? She's got to eliminate it herself by taking some more drugs. The other drug is Misoprostol. And what that drug does, it produces contractions. So the woman now takes this pill. Actually, there's 4 pills she has to take with this that create. In some cases, it's been said that the contractions are very seriously painful. Okay, women that have had children through natural labor and delivery, and then eventually decided they didn't want to grow their family more, so took the abortion pill, said the contractions in the abortion pill setting in the house was worse than what they experienced in the hospital. Maybe in the hospital they were given something to ease the pain, but you don't have that in your home. Okay, so now the woman is experiencing these contractions. What this drug also does is it softens up the cervix, allows the cervix to expand. The contractions push the child out of the uterus, through the cervix, through the vagina, and into a bloody toilet. And then whatever condition that child was in is lying in the bloody toilet. And then what does a mother have to do? She's going to flush and see her child go down the drain into the sewage system. This is savage. This is it's prehistoric, the thinking. How can you allow something like this to happen? We live in a modern world, and we're allowing women to go through something like this, all because there's a cultural ideology that says abortion is a woman's choice. Folks, this has gotten out of hand. It's gotten out of hand. This is why we have a petition. The petition clearly spells out these problems, and it clearly says to the FDA that we want to have it banned completely, have it taken off all the shelves, as a matter of fact, they're going to have to even do what they're doing now with fentanyl. They're going to have to raid trucks, and they're going to have to raid ships that are coming into the country and airplanes to find out whether they're sneaking these drugs from some foreign country. But right now, it's legal. The FDA said, yeah, it's okay. You can take these drugs. So they can't stop. I guess they can. There might be some states that don't want those drugs to come into their state, but that's not even being, there's no way they can manage that. There's no way they can prevent that type of activity from happening. It's just so widespread that there's not enough people in the law enforcement community that can devote all their time to this. Millions of people are getting abortions every year. Millions of children are dying from abortion each year, okay? 60% of all abortions today are from this pill. Not from the clinic, not from a hospital, okay? Now, I just talked to you about eliminating that dead fetus, okay? What the woman, first of all, she didn't have an ultrasound, so she didn't know what the gestational age of the child is. She didn't know what the condition of her body, okay, whether there's a ectopic pregnancy or not, and whether there was any deformity or anything. They don't know anything, okay? The FDA were asking them to take the drug off the market, have all the drugs returned to the manufacturers. that we know of. And we have to do something in law enforcement to make sure that these drugs that are now going to be illegal do not get into the hands of women. That's going to be a big chore, because it's a big chore now with fentanyl. So, now you're going to add another action that has to be taken by the federal government. It's crazy. So it's not even enforceable to a large extent. These are the problems we're facing. So we want the Secretary Kennedy, we want him to not only ban it, but have all those returned, and then to make public the dangers of this drug. Have any kind of emergency room correspondence has to go to the CDC. Okay, somebody's got to know what's happening, and then people can find out the danger of it, and maybe then choose personally not to do it. Have the child. It might be your blessing in disguise. I know you're saying he's a man. He can say stuff like that. Somebody's got to say it. Somebody's got to say it. And I'm Dr. Nick, the Apostle Paul's messenger, so I'm saying it. I've taken on that responsibility. And I'm going to continue. I'm going to continue until that those pills are banned completely from the marketplace. 100%. You got my commitment. Thank you. God bless you. And remember, stay strong in your faith. Hold on to your faith. Okay? Especially in difficult times. Okay? Always speak the truth and live by the truth. Support the sanctity and dignity of every human being, especially the human being in your body. And remember, because there's some people out there that think they were a mistake. Remember, there's no mistakes. God doesn't make mistakes. God is the creator of all life. He doesn't make mistakes. He doesn't say, oh my goodness, she got pregnant. What am I going to do now? He knew long before she was even conceived by her parents that these circumstances were going to happen, that she would choose those things. So God isn't surprised by it. But God does give us the grace at the moment of crisis to make a choice. We still have the freedom to make a choice. And we might say, you know what? I'm going to keep the child. And God already knew that you were going to keep it. Okay? But he gives you the grace to go against the grain. You gotta trust God. He is the creator of all things. God bless you. Stay away from these drugs and do not pass them on to other people, please. You might get, if they die, you might be complicit in a homicide. Okay? I hope I scare you. Thank you. God bless. So thanks for joining me today on Dr. Nick, the Apostle Paul's messenger. I hope this message touches your heart and gives you something to consider. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe so you never miss a conversation, and click that bell. That's important. Okay? And if you found value in today's discussion, please share it with your friends who might need to hear it. I'd love to hear your thoughts as well. So connect with me by emailing me at drnick. It's Dr. Nick, drnick, Apostle Paul's messenger at gmail.com. Send in your questions and let's keep this conversation moving. Until next time, stay strong in the faith, stand firm in the truth, and remember, you are never alone on this journey. God bless.